from anything else, you have to declare your earnings to universal credit. So therefore, even if I could, a lot of stuff to do, because I'm applying for universal credit. I'm going on benefits. Well, I'm going to try and get understanding of this is that basically there is universal credit, which my brain can't do, and then there is personal independence payment, which their entire fucking job is get this person off universal credit into a job. And I'm like, I know that isn't gonna fucking happen. To get claim disability benefits and too disabled to reliably claim universal credit, the job seekers allowance benefit. So that's something. I mean, obviously, universal credit is like, the trash compactor in Star Wars. The walls keep, because I'm too high functioning. But at the same time, like, for me to reliably stay on universal credit, it's very fucking difficult. I can't do universal credit because universal credit is not, it is set up in such a way that my brain can't deal with it. The olden days equivalent of universal credit. Because of that, you aren't allowed to turn up early to universal. If you've never been in a universal credit center, it is what the right wing stereotypes communism as. Like, they're kind of too disabled to claim universal credit, not disabled enough to claim disability payments. So in fact, I have not been able to sufficiently regularly claim universal credit because I just couldn't get my head around it. Because I'm going. Also, the day that I am going into Woking to meet up with the universal credit advisor. So that's gonna be fun. That's gonna deal with the fucking government's universal credit bullshit, right? It does not work with my mind. Right? I'm not gonna be spending that amount of time on it. So I can't deal with the universal credit system, and so I wanted to talk about universal credit, and particularly I want fucking dare, and it's like, bro, to claim universal credit, you just need to spend 35 hours looking for jobs. The issue is I can't financially afford to live, and I can't do universal credit because I'm gonna go back to doing volunteering. I've got this sort of universal credit plan, universal credit job seekers, and basically universal credit phoned me up to kind of ask what the fuck was going on. Then my social skills are worse. And once a month, I have to meet with universal credit, and I have to speak face to face, or essentially the equivalent of disability pay under universal credit's equivalent in Britain, and not disabled enough. I don't qualify. Even if I can make universal credit work, the amount of money universal credit gives me, I'm actually kind of big into the BDSM community, but like, honestly, universal credit is like the worst dom ever, and like, because basically I tried to do universal credit and I couldn't. I just couldn't. It's got a time-based objective I've had for some time now has been essentially that I was too disabled to claim universal credit, too disabled to ever likely get a job, to sick note because of my depression, so that I don't have to do universal credit, but I can still somehow get. we tried to get universal credit going basically after Christmas, and what I will refer to the universal credit, the people I have to go to for my social security payments to stay the fuck. And if universal credit could improve in terms of being more understanding to autistic people for personal independence payments, and because universal credit just aren't getting contact, right? I'm in a situation that it's not a pleasant time for me right now. Not a pleasant time. And I've got a universal credit meeting in mistakes. And so of course universal credit is an inherently stressful thing, because basically these are me 20 hours a week in order to get universal credit payments. Well, you know, there's only a certain radius around where let me finish explaining to you, because I think I know universal credit more than you. And it's like, no, actually I've been analysing, you know, basically the moment that I got on universal credit, my mother, who has a job and a pension, is just like sort of universal credit plan, universal credit job seekers sort of work plan timetable thing, so that I'm still trying to do the universal credit thing, with the support of my parents. I am still applying. It's basically, well, universal credit, which I can't do, or personal independence payment. Ask, I can do it. I'll get it done. The problem with universal credit is they give you a vague task. And suicidal. My parents were begging and pleading for me to try job seekers or universal credit as it is now. Just go on better. Just try. Just. And also, it would mean that I could do the universal credit. But because of the time factor, universal credit work, the amount of money universal credit gives me is not enough. Because my dad showed me the expenses, housing, and maybe if I can, you know, claim, you know, universal credit or disability reliably, then maybe it's now about how impossible it is to claim universal credit. At the same time, I realized yesterday, whilst I was, you know, filling out the impression, that I can't claim universal credit because, according to them, there are less than 42 hours. And so that's kind of why I'm trying the universal credit and why I'm trying the fucking manic to, right? And so I suppose if universal credit was, you know, deadline based and on being able to deal with universal credit, I need to focus on trying to get a job. I need to focus on, I know universal credit more than you. And it's like, no, actually I've been analysing the universal credit system for the last 2 years. I have been, happens to align perfectly with being able to get up on time for the fucking universal credit meeting, so I'm tired when I get there. Worn out and were only causing me pain. I went to UC, that is universal credit, and yeah, turned up too early and was such and such getting Jeremy Corbyn into power with the slogan, you know, universal credit isn't working, and accuse of people outside. Benefits program, well, the social security program, universal credit, although fucked. And I know that my mum is she's got her fucking heart set on me doing universal credit, but I know I do, because because universal credit is a treadmill, and it is a treadmill that is designed to keep that I fall between the cracks, right? I'm too disabled to deal with universal credit bullshit. I'm not disabled enough to claim disability. Don't have a fucking clue what's going on with universal credit, because basically they like, but I feel like really with universal credit, no, it's not gonna keep you alive. It's not that, but bashing my head against a brick wall of universal credit every now and again, and it's all just really just enough to make things awkward with universal credit, but not enough to actually make a meaningful fucking difference on. Yeah, universal credit is really not helping me, because I'm time tracking this. The job, and now I'm back on universal credit, and I am feeling very sad indeed. Yes, and I've also got the time still not in a great position to deal with things, and like, universal credit is definitely one of these people of that are just like screaming. Because of that, you aren't allowed to turn up early to universal credit. You aren't. And people that I can depend on, we basically haven't sorted out universal credit yet. So, we're gonna give universal credit another good old college try. Job seekers allowance, universal credit, it also includes, maybe actually the universal credit thing is not quite as terrifyingly difficult in terms of getting 20 hours of the week. It doesn't give a shit about social security. Universal credit is quite literally for me just like there's £250 point in the dim, not so distant future. I will actually universal credit payments sort of. No, it's not gonna keep you alive. It's not that good. Universal credit isn't social security because it doesn't give a shit about social security. So if you are claiming job seekers allowance, universal credit, if you are claiming universal credit and you have to are on 0 hours contracts, and they've got to juggle universal credit, and they're gonna have issues of because like even the universal credit thing, right? I tried that after universal credit. If you are claiming universal credit and you have to spend so many hours looking for jobs, Let's Play series, and I'm going to be managing universal credit, and I'm going to be managing volunteering, and I'm going to be managing applying. But my brain can't deal with the universal credit system, so I can't really go on the social security system. So, at the same time, I can't do universal credit because universal credit is universal credit. Universal credit came back because of course I'm now home. I'm now back in family. It seems that I can claim universal credit, which means that I am on benefits, at least for the moment. But failing. For a brief moment, I had universal credit and volunteering. Then I had a brief romance with a boyfriend, and I have nothing. I know that at a certain point on universal credit, I'm gonna get kicked off it. And actually, this is universal credit money. From my one attempt to actually. So I've got my first universal credit since the whole Schrodinger's job thing, that I make enough on YouTube to make up the fucking difference with universal credit to fucking tread water, it wouldn't be enough. And after Christmas, I tried to go back on universal credit, and trouble is that basically understand how the sort of job seekers allowance equivalent universal credit works, and simultaneously not broken enough to actually be able to claim. It's more than £400 a month, and universal credit pays me £251 something every month. So I'm now at the point where I can begin saving up to get this stuff. And with universal credit, that sort of stuff can be easier. That's getting that. Aside from well, I mean, universal credit is like my parents are helping me, and like I mean, I'll do the volunteering, and I've got the universal credit things. I'll be looking for jobs. And I've got the... Here was my parents being confronted with the whole universal credit situation after a 2-hour journey. That was not... can at all function in society. And that's my perspective. Universal credit as a salient fact that, you know, I was told to apply for an apprenticeship by universal credit, and well, yeah, now I'm sort of, and universal credit payments pertaining, I'm sort of happy that I can sort of survive now. He's willing to basically give up on universal credit now, because it's difficult. And of course, the first thing that happened is universal credit. And the very fact that I happened to mention that, oh, I'm trying to get on universal credit, and someone goes, oh, you're on disability payments, and that's something I didn't consider before, especially when it's like universal credit, right? Having this woman who clearly has just gotten off the course, to a certain extent, right, the can of universal credit has been kicked down the road a bit, but I know sooner or later, I mean, essentially, like, I don't think I can be on universal credit, because for me to deal with universal credit, because I am someone who is task orientated, right? You need me to write and afford that, because I just had the first thing of universal credit come through. I could get that, but there's no fucking need, because the thing is that you know, when it comes to the issue of universal credit, right, you need to spend, you know, say 20 at the same time training their staff to be unfair. And you know, when I went into universal credit, they wanted to claim the what was known as the dole. If you wanted to claim universal credit back then, or you know, the equivalent of commute range of where you live under universal credit. So you've got, you know, you've got a limited search area, right?